Welcome to this beautiful museum. Thank you, my Legacy Alliance colleagues, Chris and team, and especially thank you to my girlfriend, Shiho. We made it here. I hate this day, and it would take a Chris Ryan, if you know what I mean, to get me up here today. I've kind of been hiding from this day for 24 years. I just kind of want to be left alone on this day, but as we go through some of my slides today, it's giving me some meaning and giving me some purpose, and it's getting me up here to share a message with you, and I hope you feel this heartfelt message, and you can do something with it too. So it's 9/11 today, and we had a wonderful day, and it's also a day of remembrance. For once, I get to tell my story, because you see, when I start telling my story over the last 2 decades, people are very quick to stop and think, and they want to tell me their story about 9/11 and how it changed and affected their lives. And so I just become a good listener, and I realize it's really human nature that people really just want to be heard. There's something to be said when you mix emotion with words. They just become stuck with inside you forever. And we've all had events like this in our lives. If it was a Sandy Hook or a Challenger explosion or 9/11, the World Trade Center attacks, or the Pentagon, some of these days just live in us forever. And it's really up to us to decide what kind of meaning we're going to take from those days and what we're going to do with them. I wrote this especially for you guys, for this group. It's all for you. I'm here, we're here, and I want to honor all the fallen heroes. I want to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned and I've kind of cobbled together over the last 20 years. It's hard to make sense over something like this, but we do, and we move on. So I'm going to take you back to my last normal day. That's me. I'm kind of ending up a 15-year career. So it's not in the beginning, but I really kind of want to share with you what it was like to be a commodities broker in New York City. We were called pit brokers. And I know there's probably a lot of people here that don't know what a pit broker is, because a lot of this business moved electronically onto the screen, but you'd start really early in the morning. You'd kind of want to just kind of size up the room, look around, and it's kind of very comfortable for me because it was sort of like this in a stadium way. We were trading commodities, and normally things would start off really slow in the morning, and you'd kind of be like 5 bid at 6 and 5 at 6 and 5 at 6, and everybody would always be waiting for things to tighten up, because they really start getting a little more explosive, because you start going like 5 1/4, 5.75, 5 1/4, 5.75, at 5 1/2, at 5 1/2, sold the 5 1/2, 5 1/2. I'll sell you 2, I'll sell you 3, I'll sell you 4, at 6 on the follow, and everyone's jumping on top of you because they want to get some of it, and it keeps going and it's moving. Then you're at 6 1/4, you're at 6.75, and the next thing you know, you're at 4. So you're going all these highs and lows, and that was me for like a good 10, 12 years before I took my place in upper management. I had one really good partner. His name was Stu, and Stu and I would do that every morning, and at the end of the morning, you'd really have to check out really carefully, because you really had to balance out these positions. And this morning was really special because we were getting ready to launch a new software product, and a lot of us were getting ready to take a flight. So there was around 40 of us scheduled, But the software product wasn't ready on time, and this is September 10th. So immediately, 38 people were really super upset with the company and decided they weren't going to take their flights. And they were going to just stay in New York City. But Stu and I, we had a different approach. We wanted to go out and visit our customers and really get out of the office too. So I remember we left the trading floor area on the 101st floor. We're walking over to the elevator. I could just see it so clearly. I hit the button, and next thing I know, I'm getting a call, and it's Mike, the CEO from the company. He's like, hey, the software is not ready. Only one of you guys can go. Only one. And he hung up. So now I'm looking at Stu. Stu's looking at me. And I'm like, Stu, it's okay. Why don't you just go? Why don't you? I just moved into a new apartment. I got to unpack. And it's just like hand slapping. It's like, no. You go. And then finally, Stu says, hey, Al, Lisa's pregnant, his wife, and she'd kill me. So why don't you go? And I just stopped right there. And I said, yeah, his reason's greater than mine. I put my hand out there, I shook his hand, and that was it, I'll never forget that handshake. That was really a handshake of who was going to live and who was going to die that day. So that's what I do. I get on the elevator. We had these banks in the World Trade Center. You'd go from like 101 privately down to like 72. And then 72, you'd shoot down to 1. Went to the airport, went to Newark Airport at the time, that's what it was called. And I flew out to Portland. Remember getting into the hotel room that night, I was totally exhausted. I don't even know if I got out of I just fell asleep on the bed. And my phone was ringing before I knew it. It was September 11th. My phone's ringing. And it's this particular trader, and I'm like, oh no. I'm really thinking I made a bad career choice. So I'm thinking he's got a problem, the software's not working, the computers are down. So I finally, I pick up the phone, and his name was Scott, and Scott's like, Al, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in Portland, I'm gonna go see Enron this afternoon. He's like, turn on the TV, will you? And, then I turned my TV, that's exactly what we saw, right? I saw this. And I was just like, at first you see something like that, it doesn't register. And then finally when it did start to register, I thought to myself, well, maybe it was just a small plane and everybody's okay. And I had some silly thought that you ever see a bird fly into a building and it just bounces off the building and takes off and everything's okay. But, so I'm talking to Scott, and I want to explain some technology that we used then, which is now would be like your speakerphones, but we call them direct lines. So we had direct lines all over North America, and they were squawk boxes, and they were loud. And Scott's on the phone with me from a trading floor in Atlanta, and I'm in New York City, and I can hear what's happening on my trading floor in the World Trade Center. I can hear the voices, I can hear the panic, and then everything went dead. All the lines went dead. So I'm just sitting there by myself in this bed in Portland, watching the TV, just utterly amazed and in a panic, and I immediately just started trying to call the office, and then 9:03 came, and that was really the moment that changed everything, because that was the moment when I witnessed that second plane hit the South Tower in real time, and we all knew that this was no accident. I remember my father worked down on Wall Street. I was kind of feeling like a kid. I called my dad up right away to let him know that I was okay, because he knew I worked on the 101st floor. Um, and then the aftermath, you know. What happened? 658 out of 960 Cannon Fitzgerald employees died that day, and 40 out of 44 of my teammates died that day. The survivors of my team was the CEO, the CFO, me, and we called this guy Slim Shady. He was just an irresponsible kid that drank too much and woke up late and didn't get in time. That saved his life. And Stu, one of my greatest friends, he was later identified by his dental records. His wife, she finally had that baby 6 months later, and Stu would never see that. So when I was in that room in Portland, which I spent like 7 days, if everybody remembers, there was no more flying going around the United States. So I'm just kind of like trapped there. I just remember I was trying to call all the families and the wives and the parents and the children. And they're all like, have you heard? Do you know anything? I was an upper manager there. I hired a lot of people there. And I didn't know anything more than anyone else. And I'm also 3,000 miles away. And I'm in this hotel room and barely have any kind of cell service. I had a moment. I don't know if you can relate. I had a moment where I just felt my spirit like just fly out of me. And like my spirit was saying, like, this is too fucking much. I didn't sign up for this. Leave the body there. And, I want to go back to where I came from. And I was just stuck. And I was trying to figure this out. I was trying to find meaning out of it. And as soon as things started to calm down, I just felt the spirit, come back to me. And then I just started kind of reminiscing of what did I leave behind? Like, I had this memory of, I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, which really was the backdrop to the World Trade Center. Just moved into a new home. You could see the World Trade Center, or not anymore. But Dougie was a barback. He was like a real tough Irish kid from New York City. And he's just looking for a break. And those are the type of people you really want to just train, bring them in early, because it was all about getting up every morning and be able to do that job again and again. It was ruthless. Dougie was probably just, just like this. This was my chair. He's sitting in my chair. He's probably just watching some numbers and listening for some customers. What makes that situation even harder, his father was a steel worker in a tower on the Jersey side next to the Hudson River, and he witnessed this whole entire attack take place while his son was up in the building. He knew his son was up in the building. So that was Dougie. He didn't make it out. Let me just... So I started to think about, why was it me that had left on that elevator that day and not Stu? And I had this guilt because I had a best friend call me up and say, hey, Al, we grew up together. It's been a long time. Why don't you come on out to the West Coast? I got tickets to go see Anthrax and Judas Priest. Anthrax was a hometown band. So it's like, I had many reasons to want to go out. I wanted to go see my customers. I wanted to see my friends. I wanted to go listen to some music. And it was all those small, intricate moments that really started to just add up and save my life and keep me out of that building at that time. I remember we had this restaurant on top of the World Trade Center called Window of the World. And it was really expensive at that time. We used to call them like $30 hamburgers, and we'd make bets, and someone would have to go buy all the hamburgers, and then you wouldn't pay them. And then, drinks, like we'd be sneaking drinks in all the time from the restaurant. But you have to go through the stairway, the fire stairway. We were on 101. I think that restaurant was on like 106 or 107. And so I know what all those people were feeling. They were probably inside those emergency exits and nowhere to go. And they had these fire doors. They were really heavy and they locked down. But all that heat and jet fuel and smoke, there was just no stopping that fire from rising up. Okay. So a question that haunts me and every survivor, had I died instead of Stu, would I have truly lived? And I'm sitting there in that hotel room and I'm thinking about this. Had I really lived? So I rewrote my entire life that week in the Portland hotel room, wrestling with the question. And here's what I discovered. I hadn't been living. I'd been sleepwalking. I was playing it safe. I was going through the motions. I was checking boxes. I was just existing. Stu was gone. And I was here. So I kind of had like a North Star emerge, and the question was, what will you do with your life and how deep will you go within yourself to prosper? What will you do with your life and how deep will you go, willing to go to prosper? And I just thought about that for 5 days straight. And I just started writing, and I just started receiving all these downloads from somewhere. So I decided it was time to start to prosper, not just to survive, not just to succeed. So this very question changed the direction of my life. Maybe you're here because you're asking the same type of questions. Maybe you're sleepwalking too. Maybe you need to wake up before it's too late. So we're talking about Stockholm Syndrome today. I think I was getting actually more comfortable hiding in that hotel room, but it was time to go. And I did actually catch an American Airlines flight back. And, it was like returning to a changed world. The skyline was forever broken, everything familiar gone. And when I got on that plane, I just sat in my seat and the waterworks just turned on, and I just was uncontrollably crying for the first time in my life. I had no control over it. And I could just remember like looking around the plane, and you can tell there were some people there that wanted to get home. They weren't really tied to the situation. They were inconvenienced for a week. There were other people that they were just suffering for the country. And then you can really tell like who just got wiped out and who have just lost many people. And I remember people were trying to be nice, they were trying to talk, and that was it for me. I cried for like, I think 3 hours, 4 hours, and then I don't think I had anything else to cry anymore after that. In that grief, I decided, it's kind of become one of my mantras. I heard a few mantras this weekend. For me, live larger, no more small dreams, no more playing it safe. And I was just going to do this for Stu. Play harder, find joy, and make a difference. Not just survive. And if we get to know each other, you'll see I'm usually the one that laughs the loudest or stays the latest. I really appreciate life, the life that I have left, And it wasn't always like that until I was confronted with this situation. Just making a difference. And we're actually all so good at it. And I love this group because everyone here can make a difference, and I know it. And we have something special. And I hope everybody will use that something special to make a difference, no matter what it is. So, survivor guilt. I didn't know what the fuck it was, but I got hit with it. And I started to just feel like I hit rock bottom. And why me became like this constant companion. The truth is, death has always been circling around me. Before 9/11, my mother was battling a terrible disease. She took her own life. One of my best friends was trying to escape from schizophrenia, shot himself once because he didn't do the job right. He shot himself a second time. And then came September 11th, 40 more were gone. So I just felt like death was following me everywhere, but I was still breathing. At that time in my life, I fell apart. I made terrible decisions. I pushed everybody away, lost everything I built. The job was ending. Yeah, I worked for Howard Lutnick, Cantor Fitzgerald. They fired me. I was drowning financially. I couldn't really afford that new condo that I bought in Hoboken. I did learn how to rent that condo, and for the people that do know me, that was just the first property I've ever rented, so I did learn something from that particular lesson. A friend once told me every setback is a setback for a comeback. I just wanted to punch him in the face when he told me that. But you know what? You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. And I had to acknowledge everything. The guilt, the rage, the relief I lived, and the shame about feeling relieved. Sometimes you have to fall all the way down to get to solid ground. So I lost my whole entire New York lifestyle that I worked so hard to put together. I needed to move to Texas. I was in the energy business, the energy commodity business, and Cantor Fitzgerald did have a satellite office there, but that didn't last too long. I was 32 years old. I went from making a lot of money to starting all over, and not by choice. I do remember Stu and I had this dream. It was a very litigious business, and you had to sign non-competes. And at that time, they stood up, so you couldn't challenge them. So since I was fired, Stu and I always had this dream that we were going to fulfill our obligation to Cantor Fitzgerald and then go open up our own shop. So that's what I did in Texas. I drove over to Radio Shack the day I got fired, and I bought 2 phones. Each phone would hold 9 lines, so 18 double cutting. And I started my own brokerage shop in my kitchen. And I created a particular product that Stu and I were working on, and I did well with it. And that started to help me turn around my life. People were trying to support me and what I was doing. And though I did have an opportunity to sell that probably like 10, 12 years later, what's interesting is 15 years later, Cantor Fitzgerald bought the business. Okay. All right. Living the 3 pledges. Promises become action. I wasn't going to waste the life that Stu didn't get to live. So when I say living larger, no more playing it small. I said yes to everything. I'll do it. Even if I was scared. Yes, I moved to Texas. I started flipping properties, and I did quite well with that. I started flipping apartment buildings, and I I was just really anxious. I felt like I needed to make a lot of people proud, a lot of dead people proud. In the back of my mind, I always felt like maybe there was another plane coming for me. So it pushed me, not always in the best way, but I didn't back down, and that was one of the reasons. Playing harder, I had to learn to feel joy again, real joy, not fake smile kind. At that time in my life, I had a baby, and that really helped closure of all the death around me. Laugh until I just, till your ribs hurt. Making a difference. This is why I'm here tonight. Not because I'm special, because I survived. Speaking to groups like you, mentoring real estate investors who want to live better lifestyles, building businesses, creating jobs, living Stu's dreams alongside mine. Every single day I ask myself, did I earn my survival today? Purpose doesn't erase the pain, it transforms it into something sacred. So, your comeback, I know I've run into a few people here that have similar stories. And, your 3 pledges, 24 years ago I stood at this crossroads. Today, maybe you stand at yours. Your 3 pledges, what would you do to live larger? How can you play harder? And how could you make even more of a difference than you're making? So, this is Stuart. This is my partner. This is the handshake. I was just actually chatting with his family. I've stayed really close with his parents up until they were passing over the last 2 years. And, if we can all just take a moment and say a prayer for everything that's happening in the world right now. And, there was a time we were all walking around New York City with just like sheets of paper in our hand, hoping that maybe somebody was suffering from like a concussion or something, so, and then a lot of these papers ended up in the memorials, and it's tough. It was tough. The funerals were tough. The time when I got back, I remember there were hundreds of funerals going on at the same exact time. I had to decide, where I was going to go. It's an awful choice when you have too many funerals to go to in one day. So, thank you to all the first responders. The guts that it must have taken to run into those buildings, the smoke, the families. Chris does such a great job working with all these organizations through Alliance. I know we all have our favorite charities, and I know there's a few in this group. So I hope everyone can think about the story I share with everyone tonight. And money does make the world go around and makes it a little easier for people that don't have it. So with that, if anybody has any questions or want to talk more about this sad subject.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So before we have questions, I want to honor you and your willingness to share this story. Can we just give a warm round of applause to Alan?
Thank you. Thank you. I feel that.
So maybe not so much questions,
Hmm.
but how does his story resonate and maybe inspire you? What does that look like? What does it feel like? How does this impact your world? I'm asking, not a rhetorical question. How does this touch you?
Chris, I'm going to say something. I shared it with my group earlier today, and you are the example of this. I had a victim once say, life didn't destroy me, it forged me.
Yeah.
And that's,
Life didn't destroy me, it forged me. Wow.
Hmm.
Other thoughts? Other reflections? Other comments?
I'm just sitting here reading a news clipping in the Boston Globe. It said, when Stuart Meltzer realized he wouldn't make it out, he called his wife Lisa. And I could just see this. Honey, something terrible is happening. I don't think I'm going to make it. I love you. His last words were love. What will be yours?
Wow.
Hmm.